G'day and welcome back to another Dbz Dokkan battle video. In this video we are going to take a look at the Giant Form Extreme Super Battle Road stage. So the Giant Form Extreme Super Battle Road stage is not great. It's pretty rough. It's got very limited options, it's not got a lot of leads, and one lead is greatly superior to the other lead. So Giant Form is probably one of the hardest categories, but not through actual difficulty. It's probably just one of the harder categories due to the fact that, quite frankly, you can't really do much in terms of, the actual team. You can't really build too much around things. You have very limited options. And we'll talk about those options and we'll talk about my team build shortly. But I think it's important to note that if you are struggling with the Giant Form category, it's one of those categories that you're just going to have to sit and wait, because you don't have a lot of options that you can just pick up. There's no real strategy around it. The stage is pretty much a stage entirely built around brute force, which is okay, but is also kind of just not that great. It's not that fun for players to have these kinds of stages. I personally don't like them that much. I think they're very limiting for the players. I think they're very, very restrictive. They don't really help that much, in terms of hey, this is a stage I can work around. You don't have abilities or methods to build around the actual stage, so you just end up kind of stuck in one place, which for me isn't really that fun. It's quite limiting, so yeah. But we'll talk about the team build and the options now. The general strategy to this stage is honestly just to essentially basically just keep transforming your units. That's the annoying thing about the Extreme Super Battle Road stage for Giant Form, and it's the same for the Super Battle Road stage for Giant Form. You essentially just have to wait, get low on health, have your units transform, do minimal damage while they're transformed, hope that the orbs fall in the right place and that you get crits. Come out of the transformation, transform again, perform damage once more. It's not really that fun. It's quite limiting, and it's not really enjoyable, but it's the only real strategy that you can have. So yeah, it is, I want to say, probably the least enjoyable thing you can do, but I mean, it is what it is. You can't really change how it all functions together, so it's unfortunate in that aspect, but you need to kind of just make do with what you can. So yeah, basically, with everything else, I think, in terms of the team build, obviously there's two leads that are viable. So you have Tapion, who's by far and away the best lead, and you have Lord Slug. So Tapion is with his Easy A, is 160% lead, who also increases the maximum number of turning Giant Form to +1. So what that means is if a unit can only turn into Giant Form once, they can actually turn into Giant Form twice, which is obviously pretty helpful. It's something that's going to be intensely helpful for a lot of people, because it basically increases the level at which you can kind of perform and do these powerful transformations. You can utilize more than once, which is great because for some of these guys they can only utilize them once. Units like the LR Baby, who's one of the bigger damage dealers, he generally only transforms once. A lot of them are restricted to those transformations, so having the ability to transform is really good, and does help out quite a bit. So yeah, obviously that's by far and away the most powerful lead. The Lord Slug, not as great. His leader skill is less, which is one of the major things, of course. His leader skill is only 120%, which is not really that good. And also, he doesn't give you that turn increase, so he's way worse than the Tapion. Then, in terms of options, so your options are pretty limited, and we'll discuss them in detail now. but the giant form category, like realistically, only has roughly 24 usable units, so it's immediately a very small category. And when I say usable, I don't mean viable, I mean units that you can actually put into the stage. So it is incredibly limited as a category, which is one of its biggest problems. So yeah, let's talk about the units that are available. So in terms of the units that are available for you to utilize, in terms of the units that you can essentially use in the stage, the units that are great for the stage, so you have Tapion, obviously. You have the Agl Metal Cooler, who transforms below 50% health. You have the physical Bergamo, who's okay. He will take a lot of damage, but once he's built up, he's relatively reliable. He's not a great source of offense, but he's really good defensively. Then we have the physical Cumber, who's a good unit to utilize. You'll see me utilizing him, but that being said, he's only available on Dragon Ball Heroes banners, and he's no longer a featured unit on those banners, so he's actually incredibly hard to get. Then there's Lord Slug, who is the secondary lead. He's not that great, but he does at least bring a decent skill set, and he's a general pool summon, so you might have a lot of copies of him. Then we have the Agl Vegeta, we have the Strength Raditz, and we have the Physical Goku, who, barring Tapion and LR Baby, are by far and away the best units to utilize. If you are running a full extreme team, then you can also have the option of using what's his face. You have the option of using the extreme int. Let me just follow up on that. You can use the extreme int it's Demigra. You can use Demigra, so you can use the extreme int Demigra as an option. You know, if you are kind of looking for an additional unit or something like that. But again, you need a full extreme team. So if you're running Tapion, you can't actually utilize Demigra unless you run him on like a full extreme rotation, and then he's still a little bit weaker, but he's okay. He's like an okay option. And that's really it. That is all your solid options. Those are the units that are really good. Those are the units that are going to help you beat the stage. The other units, like Agl Tora, he's a good heal, but he's not, like, he's very out of date. He's not, you know, a fully reliable unit. He does, you know, struggle quite a bit. He's not up to speed with the current meta. He definitely won't be able to tank hits or anything in this ESBR, but he will provide some kind of healing, which you can utilize, I guess. Then, of course, we have, yeah, that's actually really it. You have the two free-to-play units, Bardock and the Vegeta. Both are suitable, and you can utilize them if you need to, which is, you know, solid enough. So you can utilize the Agl Bardock, and you can utilize the Int Vegeta. They're not going to be able to, like, completely carry you, but they will be able to do some decent work, which is obviously very helpful overall. So yeah, it is a little bit difficult, you know, to just kind of say, hey, these are like units you can utilize, these are units you can, you know, use in the stage, because realistically there's just not a lot of options. So I can't sit here and give you, you know, 1,000 options. I can't say, hey, this is, you know, exactly what you need to use, this is who you need to use, this is what you need to use. Like, you can't do that in this ESBR. It is far too difficult in terms of like stage design. So you are very limited in terms of your options, even more so limited than the comparative, you know, even more so limited than the Super Battle Road stage was, because that stage is obviously not as difficult. So it's really quite a challenge to just kind of say, hey, this is, you know, how you utilize this is how you utilize that. Ideally, you know, if I was to say which units are absolutely necessary, I would say that you need the Saiyan trio. They are the best units by far. out of giant form, and all their giant forms also have an augmented ki. So they are actually like quite reliable units. They are actually really good, and they actually are a lot of fun to utilize. So that is something that I would say you definitely should consider. Then yeah, in terms of other options, Metal Cooler is really good. He is a fantastic option. He lowers attack and defense on his super, which is always helpful. And then, you know, he also like reduces, he also has, you know, quite a good attack stat and everything. He pairs somewhat decently with the AGL Baby. The LR Baby is going to be one of your better units if you can get him. He's obviously from a summonable LR banner, so he's not necessarily the greatest unit or anything like that in terms of ease to get, but he's fantastic. So he has a whole bunch of buffs when he is facing Hybrid Saiyans and Pure Saiyans units. So Baby's like a #1 go-to unit if you're just looking for like things to utilize and stuff like that. Like Baby is very, very solid. And for me, obviously, that's something that's, you know, quite helpful and is going to be quite helpful for you. So yeah, I would say definitely, definitely you should be like you're running those units. If you don't have them, it's very difficult to kind of like, you know, it's very difficult to do this stage. Like if you don't have the Saiyans, if you don't have all 3 Saiyans, or you don't have like Baby, then you're gonna lose out on a lot of damage. Because Tapion does decent damage after his EZA, and you're gonna have to run double Tapion, like it's almost unavoidable. But yeah, that's literally the only thing you have. So if you do not have Baby for the damage, or you do not have the Saiyans for damage, you're gonna struggle huge, because you are not gonna do enough damage with any of the other units to complete the stage. And you have to do damage with the units outside of giant form as well as within giant form, because if you don't, you won't be able to clear out these enemies. These enemies are actually relatively tanky considering how low the giant form attack stats are. Now the big benefit of LR Baby is obviously all his big perks against Saiyans and pure hybrid Saiyans, which obviously helps him because, again, he is actually fighting them like a lot. Like he's fighting them a lot, which is, you know, fantastic. I think there's one in every single stage, so that does help him. And his giant form is by far and away the best, because he has you know, he has that like additional, I think he gains an additional ki for every single like he gains ki for every single ki orb, ki sphere that he gets. So he can ramp up his ki quite a bit. He gets a lot of 18 ki, 12 ki attacks in his giant form. So that really does help him quite a bit, which is obviously fantastic. For the most part, you know, it's difficult for other units to get their super attacks in their giant form, which is why Baby's giant form is so powerful in this stage. Like he genuinely just like gets a lot of ki, which makes him so much more powerful, you know, than pretty much any other unit in terms of giant form or offensive capability. So yeah, he's great, and yeah, that's like realistically your only options. And like I said, there's not too much strategy, because unfortunately you are kind of stuck, you know, with like, hey, you know, I need to go and, you know, perform this stage and do this. There's a lot of tactics. You can bring stuns, you can bring this, you can bring that. If you don't have these units, you have no tactics. So there's no real way to like work around this. You have a couple units that provide stuns in the form of Raditz, which can help in their giant form, and Goku as well, but you need those units anyway. Like you won't complete the stage if you don't have them. So saying you need them to bring stuns, or you want to go for a stun build, is pretty much irrelevant, because if you don't have those units, you're literally just not going to be able to do it. So from that aspect, it is pretty interesting how like we kind of stuck, I want to say, with like using these units as our options. Like these are our options, this is what you have. So if you can't utilize them, again, you're just kind of stuck. But your general strategy is honestly just to do as much damage as possible. Use the Tapions to soak up the big damage, and use the attack lowering and defense lowering of units like Baby and Tapion to try and control all of the other units. That's genuinely what's going to give you like the best results. Barring that, everything else is pretty straightforward. Like you don't have, again, just don't have much of an option. So you need to pray for good giant forms, you need to pray for good ki to fall so that you have good super attacks in those giant forms to really maximize the damage that you're getting. And you can see how long this stage is taking. Like, it's the longest stage by far. I think this entire run took nigh on 28 minutes or something like that, which is just a bit redonkulous. Like, it is pretty ridiculous if you think about it, like how long it takes to run this stage. But again, what can you do? Like, you have very little control over like how you perform. You have very little control barring the units that you've already taken in. So the whole process is just pretty crap. But yeah, so that's pretty much everything that we can do to prepare for the event. In terms of the stages, they're not too different. They don't have, I don't want to say they don't have any strategy to them, but they're not exactly the most enticing stages. So the first two stages pretty much go just eliminate whoever you can first, and then obviously take out other units afterwards. Then in terms of this final stage, essentially you kind of just want to focus down the Goku, is generally what I'm doing here. No particular reason, the Goku just seems like he hits the hardest. We also have quite a few units that do neutral or advantage type attacks to him. We don't really have too much of like a type disadvantage to any specific unit here. We do obviously have the Tapion, who can take out the strength Raditz that we have, but for the most part we have Tapion, Metal Cooler, Agl Baby. All three of those units are essentially, well, they are AGL type, so they don't really hold any specific disadvantage to anyone or advantage to anyone, in terms of the team. We then also have Physical Goku, who again doesn't bear any real notable disadvantages to anyone. He obviously has a slight advantage against the Trunks. And then, yeah, pretty much that's kind of just how the team's going to operate. So because of that fact, we don't really have any major disadvantages. I generally try to just take out the Goku first, and then we're left with Trunks, who has some disadvantage against some of our units, which is obviously quite helpful. And then of course we try, to take out the Tapion last, because that's somewhat helpful at least as well. So yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of the team and how the team works and everything. So yeah, focus on Goku, then we'll take out the Trunks next, and we'll leave the Tapion for last. But yeah, so there's no, I don't want to say there's no uniform strategy to this, but there is no, I want to say considered strategy towards this. It's going to depend entirely on your team, but for the most part you'll be AGL heavy. You'll have the Agl Vegeta, you'll have the Physical Goku, you might have AGL Agl Baby, you might have Tapion, you'll probably have double lead Tapions. So for the most part you will essentially have these units, and you'll be AGL heavy, so that's going to make your team focus be entirely dependent on you. I do suggest leaving the Trunks or the Goku, obviously to initiate the full buff of the Agl Baby, since he gains a lot of his benefits based on if he's facing a Hybrid Saiyan or a Pure Saiyan. So by eliminating both of those units straight away, you are going to reduce your additional damage a little bit. Obviously, you do want to be careful and split your attack lowering and your defense lowering as best you can, because that is going to help you to some extent. It's going to help you obviously just, in terms of like keeping control of the level of damage the units can dish out to you. It's going to give you the ability to keep control, of various other units and just prevent massive amounts of damage. When you get your giant forms, try and focus on the units that are currently, low in health. That will generally help you quite a bit. If you do not focus on those units, then you might find that you're going to struggle, or you're not going to see the full, if you don't eliminate units, you run the risk of having more units fire super attacks, and you just lose a bit of control comparatively to if you eliminate those units. So from that angle, obviously you want to try your best to eliminate units and just kind of keep things ticking over, but also at the same time, you do just need to make sure that you get your super attacks, which can be somewhat difficult to do, just depending on what your situation is and how your key orbs have fallen. For the most part, a lot of these units don't have giant form key help, like in any way, shape or form. They genuinely struggle quite a bit in terms of providing you with additional key and things like that. So for the most part, the teams can somewhat struggle, and it is a little bit challenging to kind of say, hey, this is exactly where you need to go or which orbs you need to pick. Only Baby has an additional key per orb sphere, which obviously helps, and the other giant forms, Raditz, Goku and Vegeta, I believe have +3 key, along with Kumba, the physical Kumba. He has +3 key. So there are some of them that do have abilities that are going to help you, but for the most part, you will be struggling, 4 key in giant forms. It's not something you can completely control. It is something that's just natural. You will suffer most of the times if you are trying to get super attacks in giant forms. They're not the easiest things to manage. You're not able to realistically control them or control the fall of orbs. They don't have orb generators and things like that. They don't have rainbow orb generators. So yeah, for the most part, it is just something you do have to be aware of and control as best you can. If you do have LR Baby and units like that that are going to help you out, fantastic. If you don't, then just do your best and obviously try to select orbs in a way that is conducive to getting the best results for your team. But yeah, other than that, it's just going to entirely depend on your units at the time. So not really too much to say on that. You can see we're getting some giant forms now, which is obviously helping out. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. We're going to try and finish off Goku now, because that will help us out for the most part. And then obviously we'll try to take out, probably Trunks next, and just leave ourselves with Tapion, because even though we're not going to have the benefit of having a Hybrid Saiyan or Pure Saiyan for LR Baby, once we can focus on one single unit and kind of just continuously attack lower him or stun him or keep him under control with the limited utility we do have, it is going to be a lot better for us overall. So from that aspect, it's definitely advisable for us to now eliminate Trunks, even if we're going to lose out that damage on the LR Baby. So yeah, beyond that, that's pretty much everything that you need to focus on or need to be aware of. So yeah, it's just going to be up to you guys. Obviously, I really don't like this stage. The reason I don't like it is just simply because I find it very limiting. I don't always like stages where the player can't have some kind of options. I mean, the fact that we realistically don't have a second lead for this category is just not acceptable, and kind of just makes the entire process unenjoyable. because when you don't like even have a second lead, like it really limits you. You can't make decisions, you can't, like, how can you control anything? So it makes it very, very like unenjoyable for me, at least on like that front. Like, I don't enjoy the fact that we're so limited, and for me that's the biggest issue with this stage. Obviously they'll bring out more options, but with the fact that giant form's not necessarily the most popular category, it doesn't, you know, have a lot of big time units that can join it. They don't seem to want to give us a Dokkan Fest exclusive giant ape Vegeta or anything. We could eventually get, you know, units like a Super Saiyan Great Ape Goku at some point, one that's actually good, or an easy A for the existing Super Saiyan 3 Goku, and units like that. There are some GT moments that we can get, but yeah, it's, you know, a Gohan would help quite a bit as well. But yeah, for the most part it just does feel like we are intrinsically limited by the team, and there's just very little we can do about it. So because we don't have like a lot of control about these type of things, because we are just struggling so much, it is just something that's unfortunately you know, not an easy experience for a lot of people. And it's not because the stage itself is so dramatically difficult, it's just because you're so limited in options. So like, if you don't have literally this exact team I'm running, barring maybe you can switch out LR Baby with the Extreme Vegeta, you're literally not going to be able to do the stage. Like, you have to have double Tapion leads, you have to take a friend, well, not have to, but you highly advised to take a friend Easy Aid Tapion instead of taking the Rainbow Tapion that they give you. So there's like a lot of things that you just kind of are reduced to almost like literally having to do, and that for me is not great. So yeah, you can finish the stage and it's cool, like I've obviously done it. I don't think it's been as highly tuned as some of the other ESBR because of that, so it's definitely not as hard as other ESBR. The step up from Giant Form SBR to Giant Form ESBR is not as big as, say, the step up from Pure Saiyans SBR to Pure Saiyans ESBR, but it is still quite notable, and you will struggle if you don't, especially if you don't have the 3 Saiyan Easy A's. Like, you will pretty much struggle, like entirely. It's really just like completely unavoidable. So yeah, from that aspect, yeah, I definitely think you do need to just kind of like focus and take out those type of things. But yeah, in terms of other like difficulties or other things to focus on, I think overall the stage itself is pretty challenging, but yeah, if you don't have the units, it's unlucky for you. But let me know what you guys think. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, or leave a comment if you need some help. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, take care and bye.